Rain fell on the wooden cross like judgment. Marcus Brennan stood in the summer downpour, water running down his face. The grave was fresh. Dark earth still mounded over where they'd laid his wife to rest. Elizabeth. The name carved into the cross was already weathering. 3 weeks since fever took her. 3 weeks since their unborn son died with her. The rain stopped. Marcus didn't move. His clothes clung to his body, heavy with water. His hands hung at his sides, empty of purpose. A rider appeared on the trail below. Marcus watched him pass without interest. The world continued. He remained still. He knelt beside the grave. Put his hand on the wet earth. Elizabeth. I don't know what to do. Don't know how to keep going. His voice broke. She didn't answer. The silence pressed down like a physical weight. Evening brought no peace. Marcus sat in the cabin Elizabeth had made into a home. Her sewing basket still held half-finished work. A dress she'd been making. She'd never wear it now. Her apron hung on its peg by the door. Her hairbrush sat on the shelf, still holding strands of her auburn hair. The silence pressed against his ears until he thought he'd go mad. He spoke to the empty room. Told Elizabeth about his day. About the deer he'd seen near the creek. About the way the light came through the trees at sunset. About nothing at all. Just to hear a voice, even his own. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, he dreamed of her laugh. The way she'd tease him when he took himself too seriously. The sound of her humming while she cooked. The warmth of her body beside his in the cold mountain nights. He woke to find the bed cold. The cabin silent. The loss fresh as an open wound. The pattern repeated. Day after day. Week after week. Marcus rose at dawn. Worked until his body ached. Tried to exhaust himself so sleep would come without dreams. He fixed things that didn't need fixing. Chopped wood until his hands bled. Built a new fence around nothing in particular. The work was meaningless, but it filled the hours. He cooked simple meals. Beans. Bacon. Biscuits that never turned out like Elizabeth's. Ate them without tasting. The act of eating was just fuel. Nothing more. He'd lost 20 pounds. His clothes hung loose. His face had gone gaunt. At night he sat by her grave. Talked until the stars came out. Told her his fears. His regrets. The things he wished he'd said when she was alive. The cross never answered, but he kept talking anyway. It was all he had left. 2 months passed before supplies ran low. The settlement called him back to the world of the living. He resisted. Leaving the cabin felt like abandoning her. But hunger was a practical thing. It demanded attention. Marcus stood at the grave one final time before leaving. I have to go down to Dalton's station. Get supplies. I'll be back tomorrow. He paused. Felt foolish talking to wood and dirt. But stopping felt worse. I miss you. Every day. Every moment. The ride down took half a day. The trail was familiar. He'd ridden it dozens of times with Elizabeth. She'd loved coming to the settlement. Seeing people. Trading gossip. Getting fabric for new dresses. The memories cut like broken glass. Dalton's station sprawled along the river like something diseased. Buildings leaned against each other for support. The summer heat made everything smell worse. Rotting wood. Unwashed bodies. Desperation. The war had been over for 10 years, but some places never recovered. This was one of them. Marcus tied his horse outside Morrison's general store. The animal was thin. He'd been neglecting it along with everything else. Need to do better, he thought. Can't let everything fall apart. Inside the store was dim and cool. Dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight through dirty windows. The owner, Samuel Morrison, looked up from his ledger. Nodded. No words needed. Everyone in the valley knew about Elizabeth. About the baby. About Marcus's grief. Condolences didn't help, so people stopped offering them. Marcus was grateful for that at least. He moved through the store gathering what he needed. Flour. 20 pounds. Salt. Coffee. More than he could afford, but he needed to get through winter. Ammunition for his rifle. A new axe head. His was wearing thin. He was counting coins at the counter when the commotion started outside. Shouting. The sound of a crowd gathering. Men's voices rising. That particular tone that meant trouble. Marcus ignored it. Other people's troubles weren't his concern. He had enough of his own. But then he heard it. A woman's voice. Not shouting. Not crying. Just speaking. Clear and calm against the chaos. Something in that voice made him stop. Made him turn toward the door. There was strength in it. Dignity. The kind that couldn't be taken away no matter what was happening. You need anything else? Morrison asked. His tone said he wanted Marcus gone. Wanted to close up and see what the excitement was about. No. This is fine. Marcus paid. Gathered his supplies. He should have left. Should have mounted his horse and ridden back to his cabin and his solitude. But that voice pulled at something inside him. Made him curious despite himself. The crowd had gathered in the street. Maybe 30 men. Farmers. Drifters. The kind of rough characters that hung around settlements looking for entertainment. They formed a rough circle. At the center stood a wagon. And on the wagon stood a woman. Marcus pushed through the crowd. Got close enough to see clearly. The woman's skin was dark as creek mud. Her dress was simple homespun, faded from washing. Torn at one sleeve showing her shoulder. Her hands were bound in front of her with rough rope. The kind used for livestock. Her face was expressionless. Eyes straight ahead. Seeing everything. Showing nothing. Beside her stood a man Marcus recognized. Samuel Hutchins. A farmer from up north near the territorial line. His farm was struggling. Everyone knew it. His face was red from sun and drink. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite it being early afternoon. His hands shook as he addressed the crowd. Nervous. Desperate. Gentlemen. This here is Ruth. He gestured at the woman like she was livestock. Strong worker. Never sick a day. Good with healing herbs. Knows how to manage a household. Never caused me a day of trouble. I'm selling her contract. 5 years of labor to whoever meets my price. Contract. The word was thin cover for what everyone understood. The war had ended slavery 10 years ago. But contracts. Indentured servitude. These were legal ways to own a person without calling it ownership. The law said they were different. The reality was the same. $50, called a voice from the crowd. 60, said another. Marcus should have left. Should have returned to his supplies and his solitude. But the woman's eyes found his across the distance. Just for a moment. Something passed between them. Not recognition. Something deeper. The acknowledgement of shared emptiness. She saw in him what he saw in her. Two people who'd had everything taken away. 75, someone shouted. A man with a scarred face. The kind of man who'd work a servant to death and feel no guilt. The bidding continued. Marcus watched the woman's face. She never flinched. Never looked away. Just stood there with dignity that shamed every man present. She was being sold like property, but she refused to act like it. There was strength there. Real strength. Hutchins was sweating more now. Mopping his face with a dirty handkerchief. Come on, gentlemen. She's worth more than 75. She can cook. Clean. Knows medicines. You won't find better. 80, called a voice. 85, countered another. Marcus felt something shift inside him. A stirring he hadn't felt since Elizabeth died. Not desire. Not exactly. Something more fundamental. The need to do something. To act instead of just enduring. To save something instead of watching everything die. $100. He heard his own voice. Felt the words leave his mouth. The crowd turned. Faces studied him. Some curious. Some hostile. Some just greedy, calculating. Hutchins's face lit up like he'd struck gold. Now we're talking sense. 100 for Ruth here. He grabbed her arm. Shook her slightly like showing off goods. $100. Anyone go higher? Silence. Men shuffled. Looked away. 100 was real money. More than most carried. More than a servant was worth unless you had specific plans. Dark plans? Going once. Hutchins called. Going twice. Sold to Marcus Brennan. Money changed hands. Marcus counted out coins and bills. His savings. Money he'd been keeping for winter supplies. For repairs. For the future he'd been planning with Elizabeth. Now it bought a stranger's freedom. Or something like it. Papers were signed. Marcus didn't read them. Didn't care what they said. Legal language that turned people into property. Made ownership respectable. He just wanted to get the woman away from those staring eyes. Away from Hutchins' greedy smile. Away from the scarred man who'd been bidding. The man's disappointment was obvious. The ropes were cut. Ruth rubbed her wrists. Red marks showed where the rope had bitten. She looked at Marcus. Her eyes were careful. Measuring. Trying to understand what he wanted. What this new ownership would mean. Marcus gestured toward his horse. Can you ride? Yes. Her voice was steady. Musical almost. Educated. Not what he'd expected. He helped her onto his spare mount. The horse that had carried Elizabeth's things. Ruth moved carefully. Like someone who'd learned to expect pain at any moment. Like someone who'd been hurt and learned not to show it. They rode in silence. The settlement fell behind them. The forest closed in around the trail. The sounds of civilization faded. Just birds. Wind in the trees. The creak of saddle leather. Marcus didn't know what to say. Didn't know what he'd done or why. Just knew it felt necessary. What's your name? He asked finally. Ruth. I'm Marcus. She nodded. Said nothing more. Her eyes moved constantly. Watching the trail. The trees. Him. Alert for danger. You hungry? Yes. The cabin appeared through the trees. Marcus saw it with fresh eyes. Saw how neglected it had become. Weeds growing near the door. Window that needed cleaning. The general air of abandonment. Grief had made him careless. At the cabin, Marcus cooked bacon and beans. Ruth sat at the table. Her eyes moved over everything. The empty chair. The woman's things still in their places. The sewing basket. The apron. The hairbrush. Understanding dawned on her face. This was a house in mourning. That man back there, Marcus said. Hutchins. He your owner? Employer. Ruth's voice was steady. I signed a contract 7 years ago. Owed 12 years total. Still had 5 left when his debts came due. And he sold your contract. Yes. Marcus nodded. He understood desperation. How it made people do things they couldn't undo. How it twisted good intentions into cruelty. He'd seen it in the war. Seen men become monsters just to survive. You're safe here, he said. The words felt inadequate. What did safe even mean? Ruth looked around the small cabin. Her eyes lingered on Elizabeth's things. On the grave marker visible through the window. For how long? Marcus had no answer. He didn't know why he'd bought her. Didn't know what came next. He was making this up as he went. Flying blind. That night he gave her the bed. He slept on the floor by the fire. Through the thin walls he heard her crying. Soft sounds she tried to muffle in the pillow. He pretended not to hear. Everyone deserved their private grief. He understood that better than most. Sleep came hard. The floor was uncomfortable. But more than that, his mind wouldn't settle. What had he done? Why? Elizabeth would have understood. She'd always wanted to help people. Always seen the best in everyone. But she was gone and he was here with a stranger whose life he now owned on paper. Morning brought coffee and awkward silence. They moved around each other like strangers in a too small space. Marcus fried eggs and bacon. Ruth poured coffee. Her movements were practiced, efficient. She'd done this work before. The eggs were done. Marcus divided them onto plates. Set one before Ruth. She looked at it with surprise. "We're eating together?" she asked. "You expected something else? Most employers don't eat with their help." "I'm not most employers." They ate in silence. The food was simple but filling. Ruth ate slowly, savoring each bite, like someone who'd gone hungry and learned to appreciate every meal. "I can work," Ruth said finally. "I know herbs for healing. I can cook and clean. I can tend a garden. Mend clothes. Whatever you need. I'll earn my keep." "I don't expect that." "Then what do you expect?" Marcus considered the question. He'd acted on instinct yesterday. Saw something that needed saving and saved it. Now he faced the consequences. Faced the reality of having another person in his space. In his grief. "Nothing," he said finally. "Just be here. Be safe. That's all." Ruth studied him with those careful eyes. "You're not what I expected, Marcus Brennan." "What did you expect?" "Someone like Hutchins. Or worse. Men buy contracts for specific reasons. Usually bad ones. I didn't buy you. I bought your freedom. The paper says different. Then the paper's wrong." They cleaned up together. Ruth insisted on washing the dishes. Marcus let her. He went outside to check the animals. The horse needed tending. The chickens needed feeding. Normal tasks. The kind that anchored you to reality. But nothing felt normal. The cabin that had been his and Elizabeth's was now shared space. A stranger moved through rooms that held memories in every corner. It felt like betrayal. Like he was already forgetting. Already moving on. He spent the morning working. Repaired the fence Elizabeth had always wanted fixed. Chopped wood for winter. Physical labor that tired the body if not the mind. Ruth worked in the garden. He watched her from the corner of his eye. She moved with purpose. Pulling weeds. Checking plants. Her hands knew the work. 3 days passed. Then 4. They developed a rhythm. Marcus worked. Ruth managed the cabin. They ate together in silence. Spoke only when necessary. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't comfort. It was just survival. 2 people occupying the same space. But something was shifting. Marcus caught himself listening for her movements. Noticed when she was gone too long. Found excuses to be near the cabin during the day. He told himself it was practical. Making sure she was safe. Making sure she had what she needed. But it was more than that. Ruth was changing the cabin. Small things. Flowers on the table. Better organization. The smell of bread baking. Things Elizabeth used to do. It should have hurt, but instead it felt like healing. Like the house was waking up from sleep. On the 5th day, riders came. Marcus was splitting wood when he heard them. 3 horses. Moving fast up the trail. Not casual travelers. Men with purpose. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the cabin. "Ruth," he called. "Get inside." She appeared at the door. Saw his face. Saw the rifle. Understood immediately. Her expression didn't change, but her body tensed. Ready to run or fight. Whichever was needed. She disappeared into the cabin. Marcus stepped onto the porch. Rifle held ready but not aimed. Yet. He watched the trail. Waited. The riders emerged from the trees. Samuel Hutchins led them. Behind him rode 2 men Marcus didn't recognize. Hard faces. Cold eyes. The kind of men who got paid to hurt people. Who did it without question or guilt. "Brennan," Hutchins called. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About stolen property." Marcus's grip tightened on the rifle. "I bought her legal. You signed the papers. Took my money. Under false pretenses." Hutchins dismounted. His companions stayed in their saddles. Hands near their weapons. "Ready. She's a runaway. Has been for 2 years. I didn't own her contract. I bought it from her real owner. Man named Silas Cole. He's got legal papers. Federal warrants. Marcus felt the trap closing. Felt the world tilting beneath him. Where is this Silas Cole? Dead. Hutchins smiled. It wasn't pleasant. Died last month. But his debts passed to his brother. And his brother wants his property back. She's not property. The law says different. One of the hard-faced men spoke. His voice was flat. Professional. Practiced. We're here to collect what's owed. You can hand her over peaceful. Or we can take her. Your choice. Ruth stepped onto the porch. Marcus tried to stop her, but she moved past him. Her face was calm. Resolved. She'd made a decision. I'll go, she said. Like hell. Marcus raised his rifle. Pointed it at Hutchins. Don't be stupid, Hutchins warned. There's 3 of us. You're outnumbered. You'll die for nothing. Then I'll die. The hard-faced man's hand moved to his gun. The moment stretched. Someone was going to die. Marcus could feel it coming. Could feel the violence hanging in the air like smoke. Wait. Ruth's voice cut through the tension. There's another way. What way? Marcus asked without taking his eyes off the riders. I'll tell you where Silas Cole hid his money. 30 years of savings. Had to be $5,000 at least. Maybe more. Hutchins' eyes widened. Greed replaced anger on his face. You know where it is? I was his housekeeper for 6 years. Before that I lived in his house my whole life. I know everything he hid. Everything he wanted to keep secret. Ruth stepped forward. Her hands were steady. Her voice calm. You let me go. Let Marcus keep his life. I'll draw you a map. Show you exactly where to dig. How do we know you're telling the truth? Because Silas Cole was my father. And I know exactly where he buried his guilt. The words fell like stones into still water. Ripples spread. Hutchins and his men exchanged looks. Confusion. Calculation. More greed. Your father? My father. Ruth's voice was steady. He owned slaves before the war. My mother was one of them. When I was born, he kept me in the house. Raised me almost like family. Almost. But when the war ended and mother died, he couldn't face what I represented. So he sold my contract rather than give me freedom. That's the kind of man Silas Cole was. And you'll tell us where his money is? Just like that? For Marcus's life and my freedom. Yes. Hutchins considered. Marcus could see the wheels turning. See greed warring with suspicion. Greed won. It usually did. Draw the map. But if you're lying. If we waste our time. I'm not lying. I just want this to end. She drew the map on paper Marcus provided. Her hand was steady. She showed them landmarks. A lightning-struck oak. A rock formation shaped like a horse. Distances measured in paces. Made it detailed enough to be believable. The men studied it. Debated in low voices. Finally nodded. We'll check this out, Hutchins said. If the money's there, your debt's paid. Your contract's fulfilled. You're free. Both of you. If not. His smile was ugly. We'll be back. And we won't be so friendly. Understood. They rode away. Dust from their horses hung in the still air. Marcus stood motionless until they disappeared. Then he lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking. Adrenaline and fear catching up. Is there really money? He asked. No. Ruth's voice was calm. Matter of fact. Silas Cole died broke. Gambled everything away. But it'll take them weeks to figure that out. Maybe months. They'll dig up half the county looking for treasure that doesn't exist. By then we'll be long gone. We? Ruth met his eyes. You helped me. That makes this your problem too. Unless you want to stay here and face them when they come back. When they realize there's no money. When they come for blood instead. Marcus looked at the cabin. At Elizabeth's grave. At everything he built and lost. Part of him wanted to stay. To face whatever came. To die here where she was buried. But another part. The part that had bid on Ruth without thinking. The part that still wanted to live. That part wanted something different. Where would we go? West, Ruth said. Past the mountains. Away from settlements. Somewhere they won't follow. That's weeks of travel. Hard country. Dangerous. Harder than staying here to die? Marcus had no answer to that. She was right. He could stay and face Hutchins. Face death. Or he could run. Live. Choose life over grief. They packed that night. Took only what they could carry. Food. Weapons. Basic supplies. Blankets. Coffee. Salt. Marcus moved through the cabin touching things. Elizabeth's hairbrush. Her sewing. Her apron. Saying goodbye to objects that held her memory. He stood at Elizabeth's grave one final time. The moon was full. Cast silver light across the clearing. Made the cross look ethereal. Unreal. I'm sorry, he told the wooden marker. I thought I'd stay here forever. Guard you. Keep you company. But I can't. I have to keep living. Have to keep moving. I hope you understand. I hope wherever you are, you know I still love you. Will always love you. The cross said nothing. The wind moved through the pines. Marcus turned away. Looking back was how you turned to salt. How you became a pillar of regret standing useless while the world moved on. They rode west at dawn. The cabin disappeared behind them. The grave marker faded from view. Marcus didn't look back. Forced his eyes forward. Toward the unknown. Toward whatever came next. Ruth rode beside him. Silent but present. They followed game trails into higher country. Away from settlements. Away from roads where bounty hunters might follow. The land rose. Became rougher. More wild. The first week was hard. They slept cold to avoid fire smoke. Couldn't risk someone spotting them. Ate dried meat and hard biscuit. Rationed water carefully. Spoke only when necessary. Every sound might give them away. But they were alive. That counted for something. Marcus watched Ruth during those days. Saw how she handled hardship. Never complained. Never showed fear. Just endured with quiet strength that reminded him of Elizabeth. Different women. Different lives. But the same core of steel that bent but never broke. The second week was harder. Food ran low. Water became scarce. The high country was beautiful but cruel. Towering peaks. Deep valleys. Rivers that ran cold and fast. It gave nothing freely. Everything had to be earned. Marcus hunted. Tracked a deer for 2 days. Finally brought it down with his rifle. They ate well for 3 days. Made jerky from what they couldn't eat fresh. Every bit mattered. Waste meant death out here. At night they took turns keeping watch. Marcus studied Ruth across the fire. She never complained. Never showed weakness. Just sat there watching the darkness. Alert for danger. He found himself wanting to know more. Who was she beyond this moment? What dreams had she had before life took them away? Why'd you do it? Ruth asked one night. Her voice was quiet. Almost lost in the wind. Do what? By my contract. You didn't know me. Didn't owe me anything. Marcus poked the fire with a stick. Sparks rose and died in the darkness. I saw someone who needed help. Lots of people need help. You don't buy them all. No. He watched flames dance across the logs. But something about you reminded me that I was still alive. Still capable of doing something besides grieving. Your wife. The grave at your cabin. Ruth's voice was gentle. How long ago? 3 months. Marcus felt a familiar weight settle on his chest. Her and our son. Lost them both the same day. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. No. But maybe helping me gives your grief purpose. Makes it mean something beyond just loss. Marcus had never thought of it that way. But sitting there in the wilderness with this woman he barely knew, he felt something shift inside him. Not healing. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Maybe grief could transform into something else. Something that moved forward instead of just circling the past. "What about you?" he asked. "Your father. Silas Cole. That must have been hard." "Hard doesn't cover it." Ruth pulled her blanket tighter against the cold. "Imagine being raised by someone who could never quite see you as human. Someone who loved you and owned you at the same time. Who taught you to read then sold you like livestock when it became convenient. Did you ever confront him?" "Once. When I was 16. Asked him why he couldn't just free me. You know what he said?" "What?" "That freedom was earned, not given. That I hadn't earned mine yet." Ruth's laugh was bitter. Empty. "I spent 6 more years earning something he could have given with a signature. With a stroke of his pen. But he never did. And when he died, I felt nothing. Maybe that makes me a bad person. But I'd used up all my feelings for him years earlier. Burned through love and hate, and everything in between. By the end there was just emptiness." They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Night sounds moved through the forest. An owl called. Something small died in the darkness. The cycle continued regardless of human pain. "We're quite a pair," Marcus said finally. "The grieving widower, and the escaped servant. Better than being alone." "Yeah." Marcus smiled for the first time in months. Felt his face remember how. Better than being alone. The third week brought rain. Not gentle summer rain, but torrential downpours that turned trails to mud and streams to raging rivers. Water fell from the sky like punishment. Like the world was trying to wash them away. They took shelter in a cave. Huddled by a small fire while water poured past the entrance. The smoke barely escaped. Made their eyes water. But the warmth was worth it. "This is miserable," Ruth said. She was shivering despite the fire. "Could be worse." "How?" "We could be dead." She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound filled the cave and pushed back the darkness. Marcus found himself laughing too. Not at anything funny. Just laughing because it felt good to make sounds other than pain. To feel something besides grief and fear. The rain lasted 3 days. They waited it out. Told stories to pass the time. Ruth talked about growing up in Silas's house. About learning to read in secret. About dreams she'd had of freedom. Marcus told her about Elizabeth. About their courtship. About building the cabin together. About plans for children that never came to be. It hurt to talk about these things. But the hurt was clean now. Like lancing a wound. It let the poison out. Let healing begin. When the rain stopped, they emerged to find the world transformed. Green everywhere. Flowers blooming in impossible places. Life exploding from ground that had been dry and dead. The wilderness was relentless. It killed and created with equal indifference. Destroyed and renewed an endless cycle. They traveled for another week. Descended from the high country into rolling foothills. Found a valley with good water and game. Mountains on 3 sides. One way in. One way out. Defensible if needed. Beautiful if not. Marcus studied the land. Imagine building here. Starting over. Making something new from the ashes of the old. The valley was perfect. Isolated but not inaccessible. Rich but not easy. The kind of place you could disappear into. "What do you think?" he asked Ruth. "About what?" "This place. Could you see living here?" She looked around slowly. Taking in the trees. The stream that ran clear and cold. The open meadow where a cabin might stand. The way the mountains sheltered the valley from wind. The richness of the soil. Maybe. If we're really done running. "Are we?" Ruth met his eyes. "That depends on you. This is your second chance as much as mine. You want to hide forever? Or you want to live again?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He walked to the stream. Knelt and cupped water in his hands. It was cold, and clean. Tasted of snow melt and stone. Pure. Untainted. He drank deep. Let it wash away the dust of travel. The grit of the past weeks. Let's live, he said. They built the cabin together. Cut logs from standing dead trees. Good wood. Already seasoned. Notched them carefully. Marcus showed Ruth how. She learned quickly. Her hands were skilled. Patient. They raised walls. Made a roof from pine boughs and mud. Chinked the gaps with moss and clay. It wasn't beautiful. But it was theirs. Made by their hands. Owned by no one but themselves. Every log carried. Every notch cut. Every bit of effort visible in the finished product. It was earned. Marcus hunted. Brought down elk and deer. Made jerky for winter. Ruth gathered herbs and tended a small garden. Planted seeds she'd brought from the old cabin. Beans. Squash. Herbs for healing. They worked in comfortable silence. The awkwardness had faded. They'd become something like partners. Maybe even friends. But friendship was complicated. Marcus caught himself watching Ruth as she worked. The way sunlight caught in her hair. The sound of her humming while she cooked. The smile she gave him when he brought home fresh meat. These observations felt dangerous. Like betraying Elizabeth's memory. He tried to push them away. Focus on practical things. Building. Hunting. Survival. But the heart was not a practical organ. It wanted what it wanted without asking permission. Without checking with the dead. One evening as they sat by the fire, Ruth spoke suddenly. Marcus. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think it's possible to care about someone and still honor the memory of who you lost? The question hung between them. Marcus understood what she was really asking. He'd been asking himself the same thing. Wrestling with it. Feeling guilty for even considering it. I think, he said slowly, that the people we lose would want us to keep living. To find happiness where we can. Even if that happiness feels like betrayal at first. Ruth nodded. Looked into the fire. Flames reflected in her eyes. I cared about someone once. Before I was sold. A man named Daniel. He was another servant in Silas's house. We talked about running away together. Getting married. Having a life. What happened? Silas sold him south. Told me it was for the best. That I needed to forget him. That caring about people only led to pain. Ruth's voice was steady but her eyes glistened. I tried to take his advice. Tried not to care. But it doesn't work that way. You can't just turn off your heart. No. Marcus said. It doesn't work that way. So if I started to care about someone again. Someone who saved me. Someone who's become important. Would that make me disloyal to Daniel's memory? She was looking at him now. Really looking. The question wasn't theoretical anymore. It was direct. Personal. About them. Marcus's heart beat faster. He thought about Elizabeth. About the promise he'd made at her grave to keep living. To find purpose. Ruth had given him that purpose. Had pulled him out of his grief spiral and forced him back into life. Back into the world of the living. I think, he said carefully, that Daniel would want you to be happy. Same way Elizabeth would want that for me. The people we love don't keep us prisoner to their memory. They set us free. Ruth reached across the space between them. Took his hand. Her fingers were warm. Calloused from work. Real in a way that memories could never be. Solid. Present. Alive. I care about you, Marcus Brennan. I didn't plan to. Didn't want to. But I do. I care about you too. The words felt like confession. Like admitting something he'd been denying for weeks. Maybe since that first moment in the settlement when their eyes met across the crowd. What do we do about it? I don't know. Marcus squeezed her hand. This wasn't like Elizabeth. That had been young love. Full of certainty and passion. This was something different. Grown from hardship and survival. Built on mutual respect and shared trauma. But maybe that made it stronger. More real. More likely to last. We could start slow, Ruth said. Get to know each other beyond just survival. See if this feeling is real or just loneliness. Marcus nodded. That seemed wise. Practical. But even as he agreed, he knew the truth. This wasn't loneliness. This was connection. The kind that happened once in a lifetime if you were lucky. Twice if you were blessed beyond measure. They sat by the fire holding hands. Not saying much. Just being together. The night moved around them. Stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. The valley slept. And two broken people began to believe they might be whole again. Might be more than just their wounds. Summer deepened. The days grew longer and warmer. Marcus and Ruth worked side by side. Built furniture for the cabin. Expanded the garden. Made the place into a home. The silence between them changed. Became comfortable. Companionable. Full of unspoken understanding. They talked more now. Shared stories. Small histories. Ruth told him about growing up in Silas's house. About learning to read in secret because education was dangerous for people like her. About dreams she'd had of freedom. Of walking where she wanted. Choosing her own path. Simple things that others took for granted. Marcus told her about Elizabeth. About their courtship. How they met at a church social. How she'd laughed at his awkward attempts to dance. About building their first cabin together. About plans for children. For a future that never came. The plans death had stolen. It hurt to talk about these things. But the hurt was clean now. Not the raw wound it had been. More like an old scar. Still tender but healing. The talking helped. Sharing the burden made it lighter. One evening Ruth was teaching Marcus about herbs. Showing him which ones healed and which ones harmed. Her hands moved with practiced ease. Sorting. Crushing. Mixing. She explained each plant's properties. Its uses. How to prepare it properly. Marcus watched her work. Felt something swell in his chest. Not desire exactly. Something deeper. Affection. Respect. The kind of feeling that grew slow but lasted. The kind that built foundations instead of just burning bright and quick. Ruth caught him staring. What? Nothing. Just. You're remarkable. You know that? She smiled. Set down her herbs. Remarkable how? You've been through hell. Lost everything. Been owned and sold and hunted. But you're still here. Still standing. Still strong. So are you. Yeah. But I had the luxury of grief. Time to feel sorry for myself. You never got that. You just kept surviving. Ruth set down her herbs. Turned to face him fully. Marcus. Survival isn't a luxury. It's what we do when giving up isn't an option. You survived losing your wife. I survived losing my freedom. We're both still standing because we're both stubborn. That's all it is. Stubbornness. Marcus smiled. I can live with that. Good. Because I need you to be stubborn. Need you to keep standing. Ruth reached out. Touched his face. Her hand was gentle. Tentative. Because I don't want to do this alone anymore. Do what? Live. Build. Hope for tomorrow. All of it. I want to do it with you. Marcus covered her hand with his own. Felt the warmth of her skin. The calluses from work. The strength in her fingers. This was real. This was possible. This was happening despite everything that said it shouldn't. I want that too, he said. They kissed then. Not passionate. Not desperate. Just soft and gentle and full of promise. A beginning. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Both looked surprised. Like they'd discovered something they hadn't known they were looking for. This feels right, Ruth said. Yeah. Marcus pulled her closer. It does. But peace never lasted long in this country. 3 weeks later, riders appeared on the ridge above the valley. Marcus spotted them from the field where he was working. 3 men. Moving slow. Studying the valley. Not travelers passing through. Hunters looking for something. Ruth. He kept his voice calm. Controlled. We have company. She looked up from the garden. Saw the riders on the ridge. Her face went still. Body tensed. Ready to run or fight. Whichever was needed. How many? 3. Hutchins? Can't tell yet. But probably. They moved quickly. Gathered weapons. Secured the cabin. Marcus took position by the window. Rifle ready. Ruth loaded his pistol and her own. Checked the powder. Made sure everything was dry and functional. The riders descended into the valley. Took their time. As they got closer, Marcus confirmed his fear. Hutchins led them. The 2 hard-faced men flanked him. All 3 were armed. All 3 looked angry. This is it, Ruth said quietly. They didn't find the money. Now they want blood. Maybe we can talk. Reason with them. Ruth's laugh was bitter. You don't reason with men like that. They're here for revenge. For property they think they own. Then we fight. Against 3 guns? Marcus, we can't win this. Maybe not. But I won't let them take you. The riders stopped 50 yards from the cabin. Close enough to talk. Far enough to have room to maneuver. Hutchins called out. His voice carried across the distance. Loud. Angry. Brennan. We need to talk. Marcus opened the door slightly. Kept his rifle visible. A warning. Say what you need to say. You lied to us? Hutchins's face was red with fury. There was no money. Just empty holes and wasted time. We dug up half the county looking for treasure that doesn't exist. Ruth didn't lie. You just didn't look hard enough. Don't play games. Hutchins's horse shifted nervously. Sensing tension. You owe me. Both of you. And I'm here to collect. Ruth doesn't owe you anything. Her debt's paid. The law says different. I bought her contract legal. That means she's mine until the term expires. And if she runs, I got the right to bring her back. By force if necessary. The war ended that, Marcus said. People aren't property anymore. People like her never stopped being property. One of the hard men spoke. His voice was cold. Professional. Practiced at delivering violence. The law might say different. But the law's just words. What matters is who's strong enough to enforce their will. And right now, we're stronger than you. Marcus felt Ruth move behind him. Felt her hand on his shoulder. Steady. Supportive. She was scared but not broken. Not giving up. Last chance, Hutchins called. Send her out. You can keep your life. Keep this little valley. She comes back. Works off her debt. Everyone wins. Everyone but Ruth. She's property. Property doesn't get to complain. Marcus made his decision. The one he'd been building towards since that day in the settlement. Since the moment their eyes met across the crowd. No. What? I said no. She stays. You leave. This ends here. Hutchins smiled. It wasn't pleasant. It was the smile of a man who'd expected this answer. Who wanted this answer. Then you die with her. The hard men reached for their guns. Marcus fired. The first shot took the man on the left in the shoulder. Spun him off his horse. He hit the ground screaming. Clutching his wound. The second man returned fire. The bullet tore through the doorframe inches from Marcus's head. Splinters exploded. One cut his cheek. Ruth grabbed the pistol and fired out the window. Her shot went wide but made the riders scatter. Forced them to take cover. Marcus reloaded. Fired again. Hit Hutchins's horse in the chest. The animal screamed and reared. Hutchins fell hard. Hit the ground with impact that drove the air from his lungs. Get down, Marcus shouted. Ruth dropped below the window. Bullets tore through the cabin walls. Wood splintered. Daylight showed through new holes. Dust filled the air. The sound was deafening in the small space. Marcus crawled to the back window. Saw one of the hard men circling. trying to flank them. Smart. Dangerous. He aimed careful. Squeezed the trigger. The man dropped. Not dead but wounded. Crawling toward cover. Out of the fight for now. That left Hutchins and one gunman. Bad odds but better than 3. Still not good. The shooting stopped. Silence fell. More dangerous than noise. Marcus held his breath. Listened. Heard movement outside. Whispered conversation. They were planning something. They're regrouping, Ruth said. Planning their next move. We need to move. Can't stay pinned in here. They'll burn us out or rush us. Where do we go? The root cellar. Marcus gestured to the floor. It's got a tunnel leading to the treeling. Emergency exit. We can flank them. Ruth nodded. They moved fast. Down into the cellar through the narrow tunnel Marcus had dug for exactly this kind of emergency. It opened behind a cluster of rocks 50 yards from the cabin. Hidden by brush and shadow. They emerged into chaos. The remaining gunman was setting fire to the cabin. Flames already licked at the roof. Black smoke rose into the clear sky. Hutchins stood guard. Gun drawn. Watching for movement. Waiting. Marcus aimed at the gunman. Held his breath. Squeezed. The man fell. Dropped the burning brand he'd been holding. His body twitched once, then went still. Hutchins spun. Got off one shot before Ruth's bullet caught him in the chest. Dead center. He staggered. Looked down at the blood spreading across his shirt. Looked up at them with dying eyes. Fell. The shooting stopped. The only sound was fire consuming their cabin. Everything they'd built. Everything they'd made. Turning to ash and smoke. Marcus and Ruth stood in the cover of rocks. Both breathing hard. Both alive. Both covered in powder smoke and dust. Is it over? Ruth asked. Her voice shook slightly. Adrenaline fading. Reality setting in. Marcus scanned the area. The 3 men were down. 2 definitely dead. 1 wounded but not moving. Not a threat. It's over. They walked to where Hutchins lay. He was still breathing. Blood bubbled at his lips. Each breath weaker than the last. He looked up at Marcus with dying eyes. Confused. Betrayed. Like he couldn't understand how it had come to this. You, he whispered. You chose her. Over everything. Yeah. Marcus said. I did. Why? Because she's worth it. Because everyone deserves to be free. Because I'm tired of people like you deciding who gets to live and who gets to be property. Hutchins smiled. Blood stained his teeth. Made him look grotesque. Doesn't matter. There's always others. Men like me. Men who'll keep coming. Then we'll deal with them too. Hutchins's eyes went empty. His breathing stopped. The light faded from his face. Marcus felt no satisfaction. No triumph. Just weariness. Killing was supposed to mean something. But it just left you tired and hollow. Just left you with bodies and questions. The cabin burned behind them. Everything they built. All their work. Turning to ash and smoke. Ruth stood beside him. Her hand found his. Squeezed. Shared grief and shared resolve. What now? She asked. Now we start again. Somewhere else. Somewhere far from here. You'd do that? Keep running? Keep giving everything up for me? Marcus turned to face her. Looked into those eyes that had first caught his attention months ago in that crowded settlement street. Saw strength. Courage. Hope. Saw someone worth fighting for. Worth dying for. Worth living for. I'm not giving anything up, he said. I'm gaining everything that matters. You're my future now. The cabin. The valley. They're just places. You're home. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. But she was smiling. Then let's go home. Wherever that is. They salvaged what they could from the fire. Not much. Some tools. Blankets. A bit of food. Enough to survive. Packed their horses with what remained. left the valley as the sun set. Behind them smoke rose into the twilight sky. Ahead lay unknown country. New possibilities. A future they'd have to build from nothing. Marcus didn't look back. The past was ash and memory. Done. Finished. The future was the woman riding beside him. The choice he'd made. The life they'd build together. That was enough. More than enough. That was everything. They rode west for 2 weeks. Crossed rivers and mountains. Avoided settlements. Stayed to wilderness where questions weren't asked and pasts didn't matter. The land opened before them. Vast and empty and full of promise. Full of space to disappear. To become someone new. The journey was hard. They slept under stars. Ate what they could hunt or gather. Rationed water carefully. But they were together. That made everything bearable. Made hardship feel like adventure instead of punishment. They found a place eventually. A hidden valley deeper in the mountains. Water ran clear from a spring. Game was plentiful. Mountains surrounded them on 3 sides. One way in. One way out. Defensible if needed. Beautiful regardless. This is it, Ruth said. She dismounted and walked into the meadow. Turned in a slow circle. Taking it all in. This is where we stop running. You sure? Marcus. She turned to him. Her face was serious. Determined. I've been running my whole life. From Silas. From bondage. From the past. I'm tired. I want to plant roots. Build something that lasts. With you. Marcus dismounted. Walked to where a cabin might stand. Studied the land. Imagined the work ahead. The years it would take. The life they'd create. He could see it. Could feel it. This was right. He turned to Ruth. She'd moved to the center of the meadow. Standing in tall grass. Sunlight caught in her hair. Made her glow. She never looked more beautiful. Or more free. She was smiling. Really smiling. Not the careful smile of someone afraid to show joy. But pure happiness. Then this is home, he said. They built their second cabin together. Better this time. They'd learned from mistakes. Made it strong. Made it weatherproof. Made it last. The walls went up straight. The roof was tight. The door fit properly. Every detail attended to. Every lesson applied. As the walls rose, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope that the past would return. Not hope that grief would magically disappear. But hope that the future might be worth living. That loss could transform into finding. That endings could become beginnings. Ruth worked beside him every day. Strong. Capable. Equal. They were partners in the truest sense. Building not just a home but a life. Making something from nothing. Choosing each other again and again with every log raised. Every nail driven. Every board fitted. When the cabin was finished, they stood in the doorway looking out at their valley. The sun was setting. Painting the mountains gold and purple and deep blue. Birds called from the trees. A deer grazed in the meadow. Unafraid. The world felt peaceful. Safe. Theirs. This is ours, Ruth said quietly. Really ours. No contracts. No debts. No one can take it away. Marcus put his arm around her. Pulled her close. Felt her warmth. Her strength. Her presence. You're right. This is ours. We earned it. They stood watching the day fade. 2 people who'd lost everything. Who'd been broken by life and circumstance. Who'd found each other in the midst of pain and chosen to build something new. Something better. Something worth having. The past couldn't be changed. Elizabeth would always be part of Marcus. Daniel would always be part of Ruth. But the dead didn't keep you prisoner unless you let them. They could be honored. Remembered. Loved. And still let you move forward. Still let you live. You know what? Marcus said. What? I think we're going to be okay. Ruth smiled. Leaned into him. Fit perfectly against his side. Yeah. I think so too. They went inside. Closed the door on the world. Built a fire in the new hearth. Made dinner together. Talked and laughed and planned. The cabin filled with warmth and light. With the sounds of living. Of hope. Of future. Outside darkness fell. Stars emerged one by one. The valley slept. But inside they'd made their own day. Their own warmth. Their own small corner of happiness in a hard world. The weeks turned to months. Summer faded toward autumn. The trees began to turn. Gold and red and orange. The air grew crisp at night. Marcus and Ruth prepared for winter. Gathered wood. Hunted and preserved meat. Stored food. Made the cabin ready for cold months ahead. They worked together with practiced ease. No longer strangers. No longer just allies. Something deeper. Something that didn't need words. They moved around each other naturally. Anticipated needs. Shared tasks. Built a rhythm that felt like family. One evening as they sat by the fire, Ruth spoke. Her voice was quiet. Almost hesitant. Marcus. I need to tell you something. What is it? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air. Marcus felt the world shift. Felt everything change in an instant. He looked at her. Really looked. Saw the slight swell of her belly he'd been too busy to notice. The way she moved more carefully. Protected herself. The signs had been there. He just hadn't seen them. How long? 3 months. Maybe 4. Since before we left the first valley. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was scared. She met his eyes. Scared you'd feel trapped. Scared you'd think I'd used you. Scared of what it meant. What does it mean? Ruth took his hand. Placed it on her belly. It means we're not just building a home. We're building a family. If you want that. If you're ready for that. Marcus felt something under his palm. Movement. Small and fluttering. Life growing. A future taking shape. He thought of Elizabeth. Of their lost child. The pain he'd carried for so long. But this wasn't betrayal. This was continuation. This was life insisting on itself despite everything. I want that, he said. His voice was thick with emotion. I want you. I want this child. I want all of it. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears this time. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. They held each other. The fire crackled. Outside the wind moved through the trees. Inside they were warm. Safe. Together. Building something. That would outlast them both. The winter was mild that year. Snow fell but not deep. The cabin stayed warm. Marcus hunted when he could. Ruth rested when she needed. They prepared for the birth. Made tiny clothes. Built a cradle. Gathered herbs for the delivery. As Ruth's belly grew, Marcus found himself talking to the unborn child. Telling stories. Sharing hopes. Making promises. He'd failed to protect his first child. But this one would know safety. Would know love. Would know freedom. Spring came early. The snow melted. Green returned to the valley. And with it came the baby. Ruth's labor started at dawn. Marcus had never felt so helpless. So useless. He boiled water. Gathered cloths. Did what Ruth told him. But mostly he just held her hand and wished he could take the pain. The birth took hours. Long, difficult. Dangerous. But finally, as the sun set, a baby's cry filled the cabin. Strong. Angry. Alive. Marcus cut the cord with shaking hands. Cleaned the baby. Wrapped her in soft cloth. A girl, he said. His voice was full of wonder. Let me see her. He placed the baby in Ruth's arms. Watched as mother and daughter met for the first time. The baby quieted immediately. Found her mother's breast. Began to nurse. Ruth looked up at Marcus with tears streaming down her face. Tears of joy. Of relief. Of pure love. She's perfect, Ruth whispered. What should we name her? Ruth considered. Looked down at the baby. At her tiny face. Her small hands. Her eyes that would soon open and see the world. Hope. Her name is Hope. Marcus felt his own tears fall. Hope. It was perfect. This child was hope. Proof that life continued. That love could bloom even in hard soil. That broken people could heal and build and create new life. The months passed. Hope grew. Learned to smile. To laugh. To crawl. The cabin filled with new sounds. Baby sounds. The gurgle of contentment. The cry of hunger. The coo of discovery. Marcus found himself transformed. No longer just a man surviving, but a father. A husband in all but name. A builder of futures. One evening as they sat watching Hope play on the floor, Ruth spoke. Marcus. Will you marry me? He looked at her surprised. That's usually my question to ask. We're not usual people. We've done everything backward. Run before walking. Built a life before making it legal. But I want it legal now. Want it official. Want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours. Marcus smiled. Reached across and took her hand. Yes. I'll marry you. I'd be honored to marry you. They were married by a traveling preacher who passed through that summer. Simple ceremony. Just vows and rings Marcus had carved from wood. But it felt right. Felt complete. They were family now. In every way that mattered. The years passed. Hope grew. Became a curious child. Full of questions. Full of energy. Marcus taught her to track animals. To read the forest. To respect the land. Ruth taught her herbs. Taught her to read. Taught her to be strong and kind and free. They never told her she was born from anything but love. Never mentioned contracts or bondage or the violence that had marked their early days. She knew only that her parents loved her. Loved each other. That was enough. One day when Hope was 5, she asked about the scars on Ruth's wrists. The marks from old rope. Ruth looked at Marcus. He nodded. They're from before, Ruth said. When I wasn't free. When people owned me. But your father saved me. Gave me my freedom. Gave me my life back. Why did people own you? Because the world was cruel then. Maybe still is in some places. But here we're free. All of us. And we'll always be free. Hope considered this. Touched the scars gently. I'm glad Papa saved you. Me too, Ruth said. Me too. Marcus watched them. Mother and daughter. His family. Built from ashes. Grown from grief. Transformed by choice and love and stubborn refusal to give up. This was what life was supposed to be. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. Earned. Worth having. The sun set over their valley. Painted everything in gold. Marcus stood at the door of their cabin. Watched his family inside. Heard Hope's laugh. Ruth's voice. The sounds of home. Of life. Of future. He thought of Elizabeth. Hoped she could see this. Hoped she understood. He would always love her. Always carry her memory. But he'd kept his promise. He'd kept living. He'd found purpose. Found love again. Built something worth building. Thank you, he whispered to the past. To Elizabeth. To all the choices that had led him here. Thank you for letting me go. For letting me find this. The evening star appeared. Bright and clear. Marcus smiled. Went inside. Closed the door. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New work. But tonight they were together. They were home. They were free. And that was everything.